My name is Scott, and I represent Swoosh English, an online premium preparation provider for the OET exam. So some of you may be aware about who I am, and maybe you thought I was going to come as part of a double team today. Unfortunately, my co-presenter Una is not going to take part in the presentation today. So maybe that's a good thing, maybe it's a bad thing. Anyway, it's an absolute honor to be here, and I really look forward to helping you guys out with the OET exam as part of this amazing conference that has been put together by OET Official. So we're going to look at an aspect of the speaking exam today, namely the clinical communication criteria for OET's commitment to quality practitioner to patient speaking skills. So I ultimately think, as well as every other provider, that OET has done an absolutely fantastic job of ensuring that everyone who does this exam is ready on day one to go into their role as a nurse, a doctor, or any other healthcare role and really excel, get onto the ground running, and do a fantastic job from the very beginning in English. So we're going to start off today by playing a short video. I want you to think of the question on the right-hand side. How would you rate this GP to patient consultation? So think, obviously, is it a good consultation, a not so good consultation, and also why you think it's a good or not so good consultation while we watch this short video. So can we play the video, please?
Come in. Hello.
Hello, nice to meet you. I'm just back again.
Yes. Yeah, it's not that long since you were last here.
I know, but I'm really not happy with these heavy periods I've been
You're not
having.
happy?
Well, no, I've been to see you several times, and you put me on tablets, and they're just not working. And
But you've
I'm really thinking I want to.
Excuse me. You've not had the time to take the whole course of tablets. So how do you know they're not working?
I'm just far too busy. I have a really busy, hectic life. I'm running this major organisation that's having a huge conference, and I've been thinking a lot about it.
But you're
and
not
I
too
just
busy
want to
to
have
look
a
after your health.
hysterectomy.
You can't. A hysterectomy?
Yes, that's what I want. I want to be referred on so I can have a hysterectomy.
Well,
and just get this whole scenario finished and done with.
I think you're overreacting. I think that you're.
But you don't live my life. I'm really
Can I
struggling
just tell
here.
you what your options are here? Let's just
All right,
take a
I'll
step
listen
back
to your options.
and listen
Right.
to your options. First of all, tell me, what was the problem with taking the medicine? What was the problem now that you couldn't take the medicine as prescribed?
Well, I'm busy, I'm travelling,
We're all
I'm
busy.
not always
But if this is a
remembering to
priority
take these
for
tablets
you,
with me.
You need to
Well,
make it a priority.
I've already made my mind up that I'm not wanting to go down the tablet route. It's the hysterectomy that I'm
So
wanting.
the last time you were here, we discussed having a coil. That can be quite effective in helping with heavy bleeding.
I'm not interested in that.
Well, that's a non-medical alternative.
Okay, everyone, so hope you watched the video and you found it pretty useful. So I don't think you can maybe comment on the chat box, but just think to yourself, what was the video like to you? What was the consultation like? Hopefully you thought it wasn't a good consultation because it wasn't great. But was the problem necessarily with the advice that the doctor was given? Or was it more so with her delivery of the information? So hopefully you think that it was the delivery of the information, and ultimately her communication skills was the big issue in this video. She was pretty irritated. She showed no care. Her body language wasn't great. She just didn't seem like she really wanted to help that patient overall. So that takes us into our big question today as part of our this presentation today. What makes a healthcare professional a truly effective communicator? So this is a bit of a rhetorical question. I want everyone to think about their answer to this question one moment, get a few ideas in your head, and then we will move on with exploring some of the answers that I have come up with Swoosh English alongside OET to really think about what makes an effective communicator. So here are some ideas that you may have thought about when you were answering the question. We're going to expand upon these a bit more. They are building rapport, patience and understanding, empathy, creating a dialogue, reinforcing understanding, and emotional intelligence. All of these are pretty essential to healthcare in general, but also highly applicable to how you will be assessed by OET to bring these skills into the workplace in the English language. So let's look at the first idea, which is building rapport. Well, what exactly is building rapport? Well, it is developing a relationship and a connection with someone. So you will obviously think this is pretty essential to a healthcare professional. You want that patient to be friendly with you. You want to be friendly with that patient. You want to feel warm. They want to feel comfortable around you, because that will allow them to open up and give the information that you want to hear so you can diagnose your problem. So some things you can do to engage in building rapport is a bit of small talk. Hi, how are you today? How's the weather, etc. Things like this here to make the patient feel comfortable and to develop that bond. Getting to know the patient also helps. So once again, expanding upon that small talk and just really making them feel comfortable before you really get into the essence of that consultation, which is about to begin. So some general English skills will come in useful for that at the beginning of the consultation. Next up, we have patience and understanding. So as we saw in that video, that doctor showed absolutely zero patience and really didn't see and show an understanding of what that patient was trying to convey. She obviously was giving me advice, but she wasn't taking into consideration the patient's needs and concerns. So my advice would be, if you're dealing with a somewhat difficult patient, don't be difficult back. You have to show understanding for the perspective. You have to show that you care about them, that you are listening to their concerns and respond appropriately. So you're going to have to accept flawed judgment, but ultimately show that you care, that you're listening, and that that patient is in the right hands for you as a healthcare professional. Okay, so expanding upon the big idea that is effective communication, well, we can't talk about that without talking about empathy. What is empathy? Well, empathy is essentially putting yourself in someone else's shoes and seeing the situation from their perspective. So you're going to be dealing with frustrated, tired, scared, and concerned patients. They're going to be very afraid of potentially what news you're going to give them. So you want to put yourself in their shoes by seeing it from their perspective. So you can do two things regarding that, involving direct and indirect empathy. Direct empathy is actually affiliating yourself with what the patient is going through. You can say, oh, I know from experience how you're feeling today, and I want to know that you are in the right hands. Okay, you're putting yourself in their shoes. You can also express indirect empathy. So that means you're just thinking about that situation and responding appropriately. Oh, I understand how you must feel. Okay, I'm sorry to hear that you feel like this today. So indirect empathy versus direct. Absolute care. As we can see, the nurse is using that via some body language as well in the picture, which we'll expand upon a bit more later. Creating a dialogue is also essential. So you want to ensure that you're having a two-way conversation in your consultation. You don't want to be talking at the patient the entire time. Instead, you want the patient to be talking at you as well. So what you really want to do, and OET do a great job of configuring this for their criteria, is eliciting a conversation. You want to obviously ask the questions, get the patients to deliver that information, ask some more questions, process the information, and then you give your diagnosis to ensure that it's not just you speaking the entire time, because of that, the patient may actually switch off. Now, of course, as the professional, you should be leading the conversation, but it shouldn't be something like 90% you talking, 10% the patient talking. It shouldn't be a bit more even in regards to that. So ensure that you do create a dialogue, give the patient a chance to speak. Developing upon creating a dialogue, you also want to reinforce understanding. So you're going to be giving some pretty heavy information potentially about what the patient is going through and what the diagnosis is. This is compounded even more when you're giving them difficult information. Maybe it's about a terminal illness, for example. You want to reinforce their understanding. So you want to make sure that it's a dialogue and not a monologue. So every so often, ask what I would call a CCQ question or a closed question to ensure that they are processing what is going on. Now, of course, there are many examples of these, and you've probably come across these in your OET studies. But for example, you might ask, is this okay for you? Is everything clear so far? Even a yes or a no would be enough to ensure the patient is involved in the conversation and that they're processing that information and that everything is going smoothly ahead. Finally, and this kind of develops upon everything we talked about so far, emotional intelligence. Look at the picture on the right. We've got a nurse dealing with a pretty angry patient. So how would you respond to that patient in that scenario? Okay, the patient is going to be upset. Whatever you say could actually make them more upset. So you really have to read the scenario very, very carefully and also respond as appropriately as you can. After all, you want to ensure that your emotional intelligence is in tune with that scenario to get the most out of that patient and potentially stop anything from escalating more so into a bigger problem. So approach with caution and approach with care is the most important information I would give for your own emotional intelligence. So think to yourself, how would you deal with that situation as a healthcare professional to ensure that that patient is adequately taken care of? Okay, so we're now going to release a poll. The poll is on the question: when we communicate, what percentage is conveyed in words? We have 4 options, A, B, C, and D. I'm just very interested to hear what you think about regarding this question overall. So can we release the poll, please? See what you think your answer is to this question. As little as 7% or as much as 77%. Okay, the results are coming through. Interesting. All right. Okay, so I'm going to confirm this poll in a second when the poll is closed and see the answers. All right, so I can pretty much confirm that people have answered the way most people thought this information gone, with the majority, 45% of people who polled saying 77% of what we convey is in words. Drum roll, please. Shock horror. The answer is 7%. A little tiny amount of what we communicate is in words. So this information is based on Dr. Albert Mehrabian's 7-38-55% rule on the elements of personal communication. A massive 38 and 55% of what we communicate is in our voice, in our tone, and in our body language. So look back at what that doctor was saying in the first video. So her words were obviously good, but her voice was sharp. Her tone was irate, her tone was angry, and her body language, she was turned away from the computer, not even really addressing the patient. So the majority, 93% of what she was communicating was communicated without the words, and she wasn't doing that effectively. Therefore, her communication wasn't very bad. So it wasn't very good, sorry. And that's why it's incredibly important to consider these things for you as a healthcare provider about how you speak and also your body language as well. So how can OET make you a truly effective healthcare communicator in English? Well, it comes down to the development of the clinical communication criteria. So relationship building, okay? When we think about relationship building, that takes into account empathy, patient's understanding, and building rapport, as we talked about, to develop that connection with the patient. Understanding and incorporating the patient's perspective. Once again, empathy, patient's understanding, creating a dialogue. Providing structure. We talk about reinforcing understanding and creating that dialogue. Information gathering. Once again, we talk about creating a dialogue, reinforcing understanding, etc. And then also information giving. It takes into account all of the aspects of general clinical communication criteria to see that OET have done a fantastic job of ensuring that all of those skills are assessed with the OET exam, therefore putting you in a much more advantageous position for when you start practicing as a doctor or a nurse in a healthcare perspective. So that's why these have been developed, and that's why they're so important to learn and to practice for your OET speaking preparation. So what has Swoosh English learned to help you develop these skills overall? Well, of course, I'm going to generalize here because some doctors and nurses, of course, are very different, but each healthcare profession requires a slightly different approach. For example, doctors are very good at relaying the facts and giving really, really detailed and dense information, maybe not so good at reinforcing understanding or even showing a bit more, and could even show a bit more empathy. So what doctors need to work on, from what I can see in the classroom, is that you want to make sure that you're opening that dialogue. You're making the patient speak more and you're asking them to understand more, as well as maybe switching on the empathy a little bit more. But of course, I've seen many doctors who are incredibly empathetic people and are good at that aspect. Okay, and regarding nurses, well, nurses, of course, are full of empathy. They're on the front line. They're friendly. They're jovial. Everyone loves to see the nurse, but maybe they could structure their report a bit better and their information to give more clear information. So different aspects of clinical communication criteria can be reflected on. Number 2, expressing care and empathy comes more naturally when felt. So I worked as an OET interlocutor for a while when I lived in Melbourne, and I tried to get the patients to open up as if they actually were in the hospital, in the GP clinic, etc., by acting a bit in the scenario. So when you're doing your practice, don't imagine you're the person you're speaking to as the teacher or even as the student. Imagine them as your patient, okay? That will help you feel the empathy, feel the emotion, and feel a lot more, it'll prepare you to show that empathy more so if you really feel it, and therefore giving you a better role play. Learn the CCC and tailor your response to them. You need to know that criteria. You need to be practicing that criteria and ensuring that you are reaching all of those aspects in the classroom. Also, in addition, feedback is incredibly essential. You want to make sure that because obviously you can be good with your appropriateness of language, you can be good with your intonation, you can be good with your resources of grammar and expression, but you want to make sure that you are being assessed in terms of the empathy you're showing. Are you asking the right closed questions? Are you showing that emotional intelligence? Are you creating a dialogue so that you can continue to improve that score over time? And finally, don't neglect your general English. You want to ensure that you are practicing the linguistic criteria as well as the clinical communication criteria to make sure that you are ready to ace that OET exam and hit the ground running on day 1 of your healthcare job. So thanks a lot for watching today. I really hope that everyone got lots of useful information about OET speaking and how the clinical communication criteria is essential for you to really hit the ground running on day 1 of your healthcare job. Thanks a lot for watching. I'm Scott from Swoosh English, and I'll speak to you very soon.